All right, Quentin, here we are with another episode of the Nervous System Training Podcast. Today, we're going to be going over some footage of different athletes in different disciplines. We'll start with GSP, doing nervous system training. And yeah, as we were saying before, all training is valuable, all training is good. And what we're doing is we're trying to find the nuggets of different training systems that apply to martial arts. So we're not critiquing these systems. We're searching for the gold nuggets for our people.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it because a lot of people think that the nervous system training is like solely a Marv Marinovich project. But he didn't come up with all these ideas. These are ideas he's been learning from other experts for like over like 50 years. So that's really what the heart of the nervous system training is. Just the things that deliver the best possible results put together in a nice, seamless way.
Yeah, I
So,
love that. So we'll start pulling some of these things together. So this is GSP in 2011. I believe he was with Sports Science Lab at that point, and he's doing some gymnastics type moves in these videos. Explosive, flowy.
okay, so I think this is before GSP got into nervous system training because there was a period of time, I was a big George fan, where GSP was doing a lot of different training methodologies. Yeah, this is when he got really big into like powerlifting and CrossFit style training, like the whole functional movement sort of era from like the early 2010s. And if you look, this is like before the knee injury actually happened. I think he was getting ready to fight Nate Diaz at the time, and he's doing a lot of barbell squat jumps, things along those lines, doing hurdle hops. So a lot of what we're seeing right now is a lot of power training, which does has a lot of value to it. In my opinion, I don't think power output is as important as like most training systems emphasize. And there's a very specific reason why I think power is the most dominant factor that they try to push over force. And that's because of the testing standards that athletes have to go through. We're kind of in a weird marketing system of sports where broad jumps, 40-yard dashes, 60-yard dashes, vertical jumps are a selling point for athletes more than what they produce on the field, at least in the beginning of their career. And those are called like hard qualities. I believe Marv called them like you got hard qualities and you got soft qualities. Like soft qualities is like fluidity of movement, force generation, elasticity, skill acquisition, rhythm, timing, adaptation. But those things are really hard to quantify. We don't quite have the technology to figure out how to measure those. And hard qualities are like your jumping ability, your broad jump, your vertical jump, your 60-yard sprint, your 40-yard sprint, your VO2 max test. Those are the things we do know how to qualify. And because of those testing standards that basically really dictate how athletes get marketed on sports teams for the NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL, all those areas you can put a number to and you can negotiate contracts with, to make yourself more marketable for a team. So a lot of these strength and conditioning programs are really trying to improve these hard quality metrics. So you get a lot of different training systems that focus on power, that focus on coiling, that focus on improving a sprint time, sprint mechanics. One big movement, because power is like one big explosive movement. Rate of force development is a bunch of explosive movements combined. So like hitting a golf ball, that's a power move. But let's say trying to find like a different, but throwing a punching combination, that's more of a force move. It's a rate of force development because it's a sequence of actions together instead of just one big output.
Okay.
And I believe, just based on what I've been seeing, that improving these soft qualities actually equate to better performance than just solely sticking with the hard qualities. Because you can get an athlete that generates a ton of power, but there's more to sports than just power output. There's all, like, when you're watching a fight, there's rhythm, there's timing, there's fluidity, there's takedown defense, there's adaptation. There's all these different things that we can't measure that really make up the meat and potatoes of sports. So I think that's where training kind of went. And you kind of notice this is older style training too. This is like 2010, I believe. This was
2011 it was released.
Yeah, 2011. So this is right when he tore his knee.
Good.
So here's something interesting that I came across, is that there's a new study to measure sports injuries. Now, apparently between 2000 to 2018, I believe, that the only thing that qualified as an injury for, say, a professional team or university in older studies was the athlete's inability to get on the field. So that's a catastrophic injury. It wasn't including muscle tears, lower back strain, tendinitis, all of these things that hurt chronically on athletes that a lot of them just play through. When they changed the testing standard, when they changed the qualification of an injury to anything that creates a chronic pain disorder, grade 1 through 4 tendinitis, anything along those lines, they marked an 80% increase in sports injuries since the heavy weightlifting system has been introduced since the early 2000s.
Wow.
Yeah, so you have to really look at the fine literature when it comes to these studies and what they qualify as an injury. So now you have a system that's totally embedded across the globe that on paper has not been causing injuries. But when I'm working with athletes, or when you're hearing all these things, because I talk to a lot of people, like hundreds of calls each month, different guys, different problems, you start hearing the same thing over and over again. I can't weightlift anymore. It's killing my back. I'm having neck issues. I'm having shoulder issues. When I tried doing all these different strength and conditioning protocols, it's not giving me what I need out of it. And a lot of guys kind of just avoid the weights and they start getting into like calisthenics and things like that. So even though the data's not showing it, the anecdotal evidence, it's hearing time and time again. And now the classification is fitting the anecdotal evidence, and it's revealing we have a huge problem with our strength and conditioning approach.
In general, what are your opinions on gymnastics training and more broadly calisthenics training in general, as it pertains to performance in fight contexts?
I think it's okay. I think it's better than weightlifting.
Mm-hmm.
It's more neurological calisthenics. You promote more neurological drive. It will create that stiffness that you see a lot, with like gymnasts. Like if you ever see gymnasts do other sports, like they can be very stiff in their movement because they're like holding like all these different positions. But it's very plyometric. It's very plyometric in nature. So I would much rather see an athlete trying to learn gymnastics than just doing heavy repetitive weightlifting, for sure.
Are there any, if someone is trying to do gymnastics or calisthenics, would you lean more towards like faster exercises to eliminate some of that stiffness?
It depends on what their goal is. I don't know. Like, it depends. What's their routine? What are they trying to medal in? Are they doing everything? Are they doing rings? Are they doing uneven bars? Are they doing tumbling? Like we got to figure out what are they trying to place in, because sometimes teams will be very strategic where they'll put their best guys on horse, and maybe it was like, okay, we're not going to score big on floor with like these three guys, but we're going to score really big on rings with them, but we're going to make up for it on floor with these other guys who aren't quite as good. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different nuances when it comes to that. So it depends on the goal. I would say if I were to give a general idea, for a gymnast let me ask you this: what do you mean by faster movements? Just to clarify that.
Like backflips as opposed to pistol squats, right? They're um, like
For a
more.
gymnast,
Yeah, yeah. Like
I wouldn't be having a
workouts and
gymnast
everything.
doing. I wouldn't be having a gymnast doing anything like into the fitness realm. It's so unnecessary. Like they're never going to use like something like a pistol squat. That'd be a huge waste of energy. I'd rather have them get stronger at one of their events.
Okay.
You know, because when are they going to do a pistol squat in their routine?
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
But I will point out, seeing George Team here do this. Okay, so here's what they're also discovering with these heavy power approaches towards training, especially in female athletes, is that let's say you have someone like George who he's clearly had imbalances in his bodies, and a lot of those imbalances were kind of discovered, and this is a good way to segue into like his nervous system training. You know, if you do things like if you look at George, like when he goes into like flexion, you see knee valgus. You can see like in the way he runs that he's got tightness in his posterior hips. Something's going on probably with his piriformis muscles. He's got weak feet. You can kind of see it like when he plants, when he moves his feet. You know, which could be hard for untrained coaches who aren't looking at feet on a regular basis. But he doesn't have the strongest feet, and I really realized that when I saw him jump roping barefoot at Sports Science Lab. You'll see when we go over that, you'll see when he jumps, his ankles kind of go supinate in like this, which is a sign that he's lacking structural integrity into like the tendons and ligaments that feed into the ankle. He's lacking dorsiflexion as well. Like areas inside his dorsiflexion are not working good. Usually, if those areas like the pinky toe are not working good, your feet are supinating in. Your internal rotation, your glute minimus muscle is going to be underactive. So he showed signs of glute weakness. And what's going on is, like I said, in particular with female athletes, it's more pronounced, where there's a huge rise in non-contact injuries, in particular ACL and PCL ruptures. Now, female athletes are by genetic more quad dominant. And a lot of that has to do with the way they have to handle pregnancy. You know, like with the way the legs have to go into flexion for the birthing process. So they're more structurally quad dominant, you know, which makes sense if you actually look at women, you know, like they can have really much bigger quads than men, like on average. That's why they wear high heels. It's also, we're attracted to that, like having strong quads in a female is like a look, right? So if they're more quad dominant and they go through this heavy powerlifting process, they're not working on their imbalances very well. What happens is that these over dominant muscle groups become overactive, overdeveloped. And it breaks down the equilibrium. The hamstrings and the glutes and the calves maybe aren't working as well as they should to help support the quadricep tendon. And so then you get these women with these overly developed quads, underdeveloped hips, maybe underdevelopment in the core, lower back, some of these other areas that they're not quite hitting as well. Hamstrings, they're not getting as much work with the hamstrings. Females, I've noticed, have weaker hamstrings on average. And so when you start to hit the ground in like soccer, or when you're running, you're sprinting, you hit a weird joint angle, the quad is working harder than the rest of the posterior muscles or secondary muscles, and the femur starts overshifting past the tibial or off to the side. You get too much movement, too much force in these directions, and it ruptures one of the tendons.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's been a huge increase in this in the past 30 years. If you look at the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there wasn't nearly as many non-contact injuries in female athletes. So this is just an example of how this overemphasizing on this power system, this generalization of training, which should be more specific, it actually can be doing more harm than good.
Interesting. I have heard that women are like an order of magnitude more likely to tear their ACL than men.
Yeah.
I bet the quad dominance plays in. I've probably the wider hips is also a factor.
Yeah, wider hips, weaker in the lower abdominal cavity, so they have more space for the pregnancy.
Yeah. All right, let's shift into another one. This is Mark Bell. I love his podcast, and he's going through GOATA training. So we're kind of talking about and I've got a knees over toes guy video after this, but just kind of sticking with this knee injuries specifically. I'm curious what value you see in the GOATA training and then the knees over toe training for injury prevention,
Okay.
first and foremost, and then performance secondarily. So GOATA is all about like straight joints, joint angles. They're in every movement. There's like a emphasis on the angles of the feet. You can see they're looking at knee valgus here.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's something interesting that I'm kind of noticing is that you notice how they're recognizing how your foot placement dictates your joint angle.
Yeah. Go
So
back.
what they're doing is they're trying to help correct joint angle. I don't know if they are realizing you should try to correct foot because the joints, when you fix the feet, you fix the joint angles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So here's exactly, like, pause it right here. So here's exactly the problem with our training philosophy. There's a flaw at the root of the foundation of how we think about it. Is that you have all these people trying to create joint angles, correction angles, eliminate valgus by trying to manipulate the limb. But you don't have to. Manipulate the feet. That's the source of all of it. But they're not aware that foot strength and foot training, they're not aware of these ideas, so they keep trying to look at things from the hips down. Even if he's looking at it from the feet up, I'm curious to see if they start actually trying to fix the feet and if they start implementing modalities that are strengthening the feet instead of just improving alignment. Because here's the thing, when you have alignment issues, foot issues, you may train in good posture, like straight knees on like your Bulgarians, on your squat jumps. They may have you try to look lined up. Maybe they strengthen secondaries to help with that. But unless you start improving the feet, when you start moving at velocity, your body's going to default to those imbalances because it's neurologically hardwired into your neuroplasticity, the way your brain and spine process velocity. Your body's going to find the path of least resistance to keep itself safe. It's not going to, if the foot is not trained in a very specific way, in a very tough way, like got to hit it with a lot of stress, it's going to default to its imbalances because those are the patterns that are ingrained. That's how because their spine is processing this. When you're doing all this correction and stuff like that, the athletes are trying to use their brain to like figure out where I need to land, where I need to place. But when sports happens, that goes completely out the window. The spine takes over.
Yeah. I have this thing I think about in sports where it's like, what are you paying attention to relative to the goal? And so when you're early on in learning a move, let's say it's a skill move, a basketball shot. Like early on, you're going to have to think about everything. You're going to have to think about your foot position. Is your elbow tucked? Is everything lined up and straight? But as you get advanced, you're thinking in bigger and bigger chunks. So you might just be thinking about the release, the way you roll. And once you get to that point where you're thinking about the release, everything else is built into that focal point, right? So you're thinking about the release, but in order to feel the release the right way, you've built in the training that your feet are going to be lined up, your elbow is going to be lined up. I've used this with clients when I'm training them. I'll tell them to think about the landing of the jump when they're thinking too much about like the mechanics of actually jumping. So if I trigger them to think about the end of the jump, everything before that just kind of happens. And so for this Mark Bell thing, if you tell them to just think about the feet, the hips and the knees kind of have to be in line for the foot to be in the right position. So you can tell them to think about the hips, that might help, but it's not going to address below that, the knees, the feet. Tell them about the knees, it's not going to address the feet. Tell them about the feet, it'll address the whole chunk, everything that goes into it.
Yeah, because you can fix several things by condensing it down to the foot.
Yeah, it's the biggest chunk of, it's like,
yeah. Let's see what their approach. I'm curious because now I'm making a lot of assumptions here. Let's give it a good look. Their whole protocol. Okay, so they're talking about the way inside foot pressure, outside foot pressure. Outside foot pressure creates external rotation. Inside foot pressure promotes internal rotation, and that's different than knee valgus. Internal rotation and knee valgus are two different things, and a lot of people get them confused.
But this GOATA guy, the trainer in the hat, look at how his feet are just standing. It's he's kind of got his feet internally rotate a little bit. You can tell his training just from that.
Okay, so what they're doing, this is like a dorsal extension flex, stretch, I mean. Is this something that Mark Marinovich was a big advocate on? Making sure that the athlete can actually get their butt to their heels and that you have 3 inches of space between like your big toes. See right here, pause it here. So if you see, this guy is if this is how he naturally likes to sit, that's feel comfortable, this is indicating that he's got tight TFLs. Abduction is too dominant. You may be tightness in the anterior tibialis as well. When you sit on your heels and your big toes, like say these are like my feet, if your toes are like this far apart and it feels comfortable, that means the muscles around your shins have good flexibility. That's a direct indicator of the amount of force you can generate through your legs, jumping, sprinting, etc. If I'm working with an athlete and their feet are like this, like their toes want to touch and I got to manually push them out, it's going to feel real tight. It's going to start feeling tight around their ankles, tight around their tibs. And they're probably going to have a lot more tightness in their quads, more quad dominant. And I'll keep them in that position because I want the tissue to re-lengthen at a good range of motion. Now, sometimes you'll have athletes when they sit down, like they'll just kind of like move out like this. It's kind of showing there's too much lax in the ankle. So there's all these different things you can look for. This guy, if I had him sit like this, I would want him to bring his knees closer together, move his toes further apart, see how it feels. It feels tight. Be like, okay, we got to work on this. We got to lengthen this part a little bit more, because this is what's restricting. Where the feet go, the legs go. So I focus on correcting the feet and the legs start to follow. All right, let's keep seeing. Let's see what they're going through. And you can tell, you see how he kind of like really can arch his back. It's kind of showing like a quad dominant feature. And this guy looks like he does not have any flexibility in his legs. See how he can't even get his butt down?
Yeah.
It's a lot of tightness through the quadriceps, through the patellar tendon, quadricep tendon. And if you look, see his passive range of motion. So this guy is showing indications of a high arched athlete. High arched athletes are usually like this. They're usually tighter and stiffer, especially around the posterior hip area. And a lot of it's because their feet are tighter. So the feet are tighter, tissue following up starts to tighten to match them. Not every time, but generally. Okay, so it looks like he's trying to improve external rotation, stretching out like the piriformis femoris, the internal glute muscles. Okay, let's skip ahead a little bit. Let's see what else they're approaching with, because right now they're kind of just going through a passive mobility drill. Now, I'd be willing to bet the guy in the white has weak feet. Usually guys who have to build up so much more strength throughout their entire body, like you can tell, like look how muscular he is, look how tight he is. A lot of it is because that's the way they compensate force, because they're making up for it. So their body starts turning into like a pickup truck instead of like a Ferrari.
Yeah, this is Mark Bell. This was 3 years ago, and he was a classic powerlifter, bodybuilder style training. And
that's Mark Bell in the white?
Yeah, over the last few years.
That makes sense, because he's been doing fucking insane mass tension in his body for like 30 years.
And this is kind of at the beginning of his shift into, I guess maybe more
non-destructive training methods.
Yeah, so this was 3 years ago, and now I've been following him. He's kind of gone through a transformation since this video, and it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Now let's be clear. Like, okay, so yeah, you see how like their heels are going out, feet are going in. So they're lacking a lot of flexibility in the bottom of the feet, and the bottom of the foot arch, how the toes connect in the plantar fascia. Yeah, this is high arched athlete stuff. I see this all the time with high arch athletes. You see how he can't dorsiflex all the way? It's almost like he can't go like all the way up like this. It's kind of going down like this.
That interesting.
I like this one. Tried this before.
Okay, so they're doing some sort of isometric hold with their butt against the wall on their toes. And what's the idea behind there? What are they trying to figure out?
I think
I think they're just loading up that sort of internal rotation of the feet, but then externally rotating the hips around that. And
Okay.
just holding it with the heels elevated here.
Okay. So what they're trying to do is that they're trying to do what's called Neuro Remapping, where they're trying to get the neurological muscle patterns to improve based on foot placement. Now, this is one way to do it. So they're doing what Marv does with a slant board.
Oh, okay. I see.
So if you pause it right here. So now they're going to external rotation, internal rotation. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to create different joint angles. Well, the joint angle creates different foot pressure. So they're trying to go to outside foot pressure, inside foot pressure, right? And when you do that, your legs start internally, externally rotating accordingly. Now, the only thing so they're trying to do an isometric strength training drill with the feet, and they're trying to repattern how the feet communicate with the rest of the body up into the hips. I would say it's not bad. Like, you're definitely going to do it. I don't think you're going to get results at a huge amount of speed, though. I think it's going to take time. I think this is like a better fitness move than it is a performance move, to be honest. Because fitness is more passive. Results don't need to come like instantaneous. So I personally would think that the slant board on the forefoot would be more effective. Because now when you're balancing on the forefoot, you can hit the foot at different slopes. And you can keep the athlete into a more athletic position. Because now they're kind of like they're really taking the core out of the equation. Like, their lower abdominal cavity is completely shut off. Their posterior core, their erector spinae lower back, is lit up, which isn't bad. But to me, I would want, when I'm training the foot sequence, when I'm doing neural remapping, trying to remap the way the nervous system sequences muscles from the foot up through the body, I'm going to want every part of their biomechanics to be integrated into that. So when you're on the slant board, you're going to see athletes that are going to kind of like, they're going to fall backwards because they're not keeping enough tension in their core. They're going to start twisting away because their glutes are not activating. They can't pull their knees together. Their adduction is lacking. You're going to see certain things like they fall forward too much. Like, they fall forward and the shoulders start to collapse. That's because they can't get their erector spinae to activate. They can't get their shoulder blades to retract. And they can't get their glutes to fire. When you fire off your posterior muscles, it pulls you up. When you fire your anterior muscles, it pulls you forward. Sometimes they're going to like twist like this, like the shoulder's going to twist away, right? And now you got to tell them, like, fire your right oblique, and that will pull you into your pelvis. And that teaches the brain and the spine to start communicating with these muscle groups. I think it just creates a more effective condition for the neural remapping to take place. And it's a harder strength movement. It's a more intense strength movement because it's a single leg isometric. And it's more proprioceptive. So now you're working isometric strength, proprioceptive strength, neurological recommunication with weak links in foot positions, leg positions, and torso positions that are more athletic. The pattern is closer to what they're going to experience in their sport.
Keep watching here.
Okay. Yeah, so you got outsides of the feet, sliding up. Like, and this will work. This will work. I don't believe it'll work quite as effectively or quickly as, say, a single leg slant board will work.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't reveal as much for the coach. When you put an athlete that we'll probably see pretty soon when we go to like George doing his SSL, there you'll see how like the foot position and how the athlete stands, the coach can really get a diagnostic of what's not functioning properly. It gives them better things that they can view with the eye, and they can truly see what's going on as far as from a corrective exercise lens. And you can identify where leakage is happening, where force is leaking out of the body.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much, they stagger it.
Okay, now they're kind of doing so they're doing a single leg and they're trying to create a rotation into that. So when you do that, when you rotate in, so what they're trying to do is the leg that's on the ground, you see the guy in the black, see how he's trying to like rotate the other leg in?
Yeah.
What that's going to do is that's going to light up the glute medius, the glute minimus on the leg that's in contact with the floor. I do the same thing with my slant board. Like I'll balance at a certain angle and I'll twist my body in, so I'll twist my left shoulder in, like one half of my body twists in while my right leg remains straight to try to get better activation out of my lateral hip muscles. Glute medius, glute minimus, some of the glute max, and TFL. So it's an interesting activator. It's an interesting approach. I definitely think if you do this, it's definitely better than doing nothing. You're definitely going to get more ahead. I think the slant board is much more, I think it's just much more effective on a bunch of different layers.
All right, we can jump to this. This was the video of George from SSL. There's not a ton of training footage in this. There's a few little clips. See what we can do there.
There's a decent amount. So I guess, go ahead, start. Yeah, go ahead, go back, go forward. I'm sorry. Keep going. About right there. Yeah, go ahead, play it there. So what we're going to see is George on the slant board for a second. And as soon as you see on the slant board, if you can pause it. So if you look right here, can we make the screen larger? Is that possible? Yeah, perfect. So if we look right here and go back like 2 seconds. And right there. Now, from here, if you have an athlete do certain things, like right now he's just doing some quarter squats on a slant board. And you can see the knee valgus take place. You can see the shoulders kind of like falling forward. And go ahead, let it play out when he comes back up. And you see, like right there, you see how his arms? Yeah, perfect. Now you see how one arm is going up and one arm is coming down?
Yeah.
So that's showing that the sequence, and he's on a downslope. So that means that so we're facing him, the ramp is sloped downwards. So when you balance on a slant board and it's sloped down like this, so here's like your foot, here's the slant board. When you're on the downslope, that hits the posterior part. That's where the leverage is going, is to the posterior chain. And see how much it reveals the mechanical imbalances immediately.
Yeah.
You can see the leg starting to rotate in, starting to show signs of valgus. Calf, tibia, really lighting up. So it really shows how much his calves have overdeveloped, his quads have overdeveloped to help him for his lack of posterior strength. See how his oblique on the right side. See how his arm is lifting up. It's a sign he has an imbalance in his oblique. Your oblique is to help pull you in like this. And it's not firing correctly. You can even see his oblique on his left side. See how much his oblique is firing through his shirt compared to the other side?
Yeah.
And you can even see how his shoulder's dropping?
Yeah.
So he's lifting he's lifting his right shoulder up and his left shoulder down, because naturally when you have a weaker oblique, your shoulder drops into it like this. And he's trying to counter that. So his scapulas are trying to restabilize to make up for his core and hip dysfunction. And this is just an example of why I like a slant board over, say, what Mark Bell was doing, because you can get everything that they were doing and more in the same modality. And you can teach the athlete much better neurological control and kinesthetic awareness, because everything is about efficiency. These athletes need results fast. We only have like 6 weeks to make it happen. So if I can do a 15-minute drill and get all these layers out of it, rather than do a 15-minute drill and maybe get 2, that's why I'm gonna do this drill, because I'm gonna get more return on investment for my time and for the athlete's time.
What do you
here's
think of
some-
these things?
They're great, man. The balance disc.
Yeah.
See if we can loop the
discs?
balance disc a couple times. Go back. Yeah, keep going back. Keep going back. Keep going back. There you go. Yeah, we'll loop. No, keep your mouse there so we can keep looping the timestamp. Yeah, so these balance discs, these are really good for help for resequencing the foot fascia with the hip movement. So this is another layer that is trying to go ahead, go back again. This is another layer that what Mark Bell was going through. All right, let's pause. There's a good spot we can pause it. So not here. So this is kind of interesting though. He's doing crossovers on the drill right there. So you see how George was rotating?
Yeah.
So here's a way where you can do the exact same thing they're trying to do with Mark Bell, but with a higher demand of proprioception and a higher demand of foot strength on top of it. So instead of having to put your butt up against the wall to give you a sense of balance, because that's a leveraging point, that all the leveraging point is done on an unstable hard surface through the foot, and you have some poles to kind of help assist you. So now it's more neurological. You're using more of the body to try to integrate balance and control instead of having the wall help you create balance. And so you can do the same thing. You can internally rotate. You can go inside foot pressure, outside foot pressure, back. You can go double. You can go one out and one in. So one foot goes like this, the other foot goes like this, and you can rotate into it. Go the other way, rotate into it. Squat down, come back up. You can do all these different things. You have so much more freedom of movement. So instead of just focusing on internal, external rotation of the leg, outside foot pressure, inside foot pressure, now you can start rotating the core with it. You can start rotating the pelvis. You can go double inside, twist away, keeping the torso straight while the pelvis moves under that neural sequence. And you can hold it there. You can turn into an isometric right there. Squat down, hold it. So now you're re-strengthening a weak pattern. If the athlete starts sweating, the legs are shaking when you have them go this way, it's like really difficult. They start like, you can tell it's really taking a lot of energy. Bam, now we really isolated a weak point. This is where they're leaking force. So let's do a couple holds in this position. Let's keep doing exercises that over-exaggerate this pattern. See if we can neurologically retrain the body to want to hit this range of motion and not fear it. Because that range of motion, say we go all the way outside and they twist out with their feet, say their feet start shaking, they start sweating, it's really burning them. Okay, when your joints land in those directions, when you get on the field and say your legs hit in that direction, that is where possible injury can occur, because that's a weak point. Or that's creating compensation in the other direction. When they go the other way, it's probably easy. When they go this way, it's probably hard. So you see how much more precise you can get with these tools.
There's this idea that I think of called transference, where and you use the idea of proprioceptive demand, but in general, I think things with higher proprioceptive demands, when you train them, it'll transfer to activities with lower proprioceptive demands, whereas it doesn't transfer the other way. So it's like, yeah, you want to go with the exercises with the highest transference value. That's going to be the most efficient for performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look at see his feet go out.
Yeah,
see his lacking dorsiflexion, and you'll see it when he runs. When he runs, watch he like, because you will work like perfect patterns all you want, perfect alignment. You can do the whole NASM corrective exercise approach. But some of these people have these imbalance at the skeletal level. They were born this way. There's no such thing as perfect. It's not necessary. So when I'm working with a lot of athletes, if they have poor alignment, their feet are weird, I'm not even worried about that. I'm looking for weak muscle groups. That's what's more important than trying to make them look like these perfect robots. Right? Because when George goes out to sprint, guess what? You're gonna see his imbalances show up immediately because the spine is going to default to his skeletal structure. So especially high level athletes, you don't have the time it could take years, and it may never fully be corrected because of the way their tissue inserts into like their hips, the way the geometry of their feet, and it's not necessary. With George, with all his imbalances, guess what? Still a GOAT. It's not necessary. There's an example of weak feet. If you go back to him curling his feet. Yeah. You see how his toes want to sneak underneath it, under the ball?
Yeah.
So that shows like right through here. So if you put your mouse cursor from his pinky toe and follow that all the way up his ankle. That line is not functioning properly. Because your toes, if it was working properly, well, one that I've seen, you see how like stringy the tendon tissue is. That's a sign of weakness. I learned that from a physical therapist because I think they're like scalene muscles or something like right here. And if you look, they get stringy. Because these are weaker. And I was born this way. I was born with this imbalance. So you can strengthen it, but these are things that the untrained eye might not be able to see. And when the pinky toes sneak under, your pinky toes should be able to reach out and grab. But they're not. They're not functioning properly. They're not wanting to grab the ball. They're wanting to sneak under. And you'll see, so that means that his foot, like say here, his pinky toes, his foot's walking like this. So they turn out, so the outsides land first to avoid tripping. Because if they were straight, guess what? When he hits the ground, he can roll an ankle. The body's not going to risk that. The body is going to find a pattern of movement that's safest for him. So that's just an example, because not a lot of people know what to look for with feet. They have very untrained eyes with it. You know, if I see an athlete like this, well, you pull those toes out, get their toes to start interacting with things, start improving the dorsiflexion. Now, I don't know if they had a ton of time to work with George when it came to this camp, because they were just hired to fix it, to get him back into performance for his ACL reconstruction, like post-surgery. I don't think they really did a lot with him much longer, not like what Nick Curson did with Rafael dos Anjos or what Marv did with BJ. It wasn't to that extent.
Was it just one training camp that he was at the sports science lab?
Yeah. No, I think two. I think he did like one post-operation training camp or program with them. And then he worked with them periodically throughout. Like, especially when they got their new facility. And I think that's it. So there you can see they're doing a lot of pull work, doing the ball work, trying to get the muscle elasticity to improve, trying to get his range of motion, his coordination to improve, and they're trying to give him some things to really work on so that he doesn't overwork the muscle group that's recovering, the limb that's recovering from the surgery. Because that's how a majority of athletes re-injure themselves, is they put too much on it. You know, it's a very delicate process to come back from catastrophic injury. You know, blood supply, cadaver grafts, hamstring grafts, patella tendon grafts. You know, it's a building process. And even though it feels fine and feels strong, you have a very strict timeline you want to stay on so you don't end up like Dominic Cruz and keep rupturing it over and over again.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish up with the knees over toes, guys, since it's
You gotta
definitely
see it.
it pertains to the GOATA and then also some of this stuff. This is the video specifically on the knees. He's a knees over toes guy. He has shoulder videos and everything now, but I think this is his most popular video, just about the knees specifically.
Okay, so you're doing some dorsiflexion raises. Well, I think those are cool. I threw those in with my athletes. I'll do that with myself. It's a good isometric strength move.
Yeah, I like them too.
I would say with those tibial raises, you want to make sure that you pull all parts of your feet up. So here we got big dorsiflexion lunge. We got dorsiflexion raises. 20% of your body weight, 15 strict repetitions. Now, there's a reason to those repetition ranges because overtraining the hands and feet can crash your nervous system. It can really light up your autoimmune response. A lot of people can start getting poor sleep, random fevers, cold sweats out of nowhere, low energy. If you really overdo it on your hands and feet, you zap your nervous system. Okay. So
you would recommend about 15 reps for feet and
for performance?
Yeah.
No, I would. Well, it depends where they're at. Like, I would probably do more holds than reps, to be totally honest. And then if we do start doing reps, I personally like manual loading better than machines. Where an athlete sits down, I put my hand on their ankle. And I can control the amount of strength that's required. I can control the loading. And I can also start targeting very specific parts of the dorsiflexion, because when you use a tool, it's very general dorsiflexion. Some athletes have really good dorsiflexion when it comes to their toes raising up, but the pinky toe can't pull up very well, like this. So what I'll do is I'll place just my fingers on the outside, on like the last three toes. So then it kind of encourages the foot to raise that end more.
Yeah.
Or I'll have them do a dorsiflexion hold and I'll pull it and I'll turn it into an overcoming isometric of the foot. Because I like targeting. You want very, very specific targeting. A lot of these philosophies are very general. And I get why they're general, because you're trying to sell it to the masses. General is better than nothing, 100%. But yeah, I like using more elastic than loading up the ankles, because elastic, you can kind of get more response out of those toes, and you can start pulling through the elastic in different areas, like this or straight up and down. When you're using like a general tool like a kettlebell or something like that, sometimes you're just going to go into what's strongest and you're going to keep strengthening the imbalance. And this week's guy, he's doing the dorsiflexion lunge that he's famous for on a downslope slant, which is good. I have those in the program. Now Ben Patrick did not invent this move. This move has been around for like 50 years in physical therapy. Just a quick disclaimer for people that think, but he turned a good physical therapy move into something that's been really underlooked in physical therapy, because physical therapy is dealing with a lot of deconditioned bodies. Like your mom or my mom. They're not going to have the strength for a good dorsiflexion lunge. It could do more harm than good. And everyone's fat. So we got to consider that. But for an athlete, taking a good physical therapy move and really doubling down and progressing it to its fullest, I think that was a really good approach. Because he totally changed the game with knee health. And even I've taken on Ben Patrick, I've taken on his dorsiflexion lunge more seriously. Did it on different slant board angles, and it really helped my knee. His strength with length philosophy, I think, is solid. Now, does it always improve force generation? I think that's debatable. I think it'll improve some force generation, but he's still thinking hard quality improvements like we talked about in the beginning. He's thinking vertical jump. He's thinking broad jump. I'm thinking of ball handling. I'm thinking of better shooting. I'm thinking of better passes or better maneuvering mid-flight to get to the rim. That's where I want to see improvements, because that's really what puts points on the board.
Yeah.
Now, Jay, question for you. Now, when I'm kind of like dissecting this, are you kind of seeing like a common pattern with training philosophies? Are you kind of seeing how not thinking about the feet first kind of runs you into like a similar funnel of thinking. But when you
Yeah.
think about have you seen how the two philosophies are branching off?
Yeah. It's I'm gonna go back to my analogy from before with the basketball shot. Like
Accurate.
with the end of that
It's very
kinetic
good.
movement kind of being the release. Similar to the way that the end of a lot of these movements is the feet. It's like the focus on that end. You have to improve everything together. You can't just like if you're focusing on your elbow in the shot, you can improve that, but it's not necessarily gonna get your launch right.
And another thing about, I'll say this, another thing about knees over toes, which I'm not knocking it, it's an effective marketing strategy. I really am cautious when I look at a training program of any kind that really tries to sell big movements like dunking or home runs. Now, I'm guilty of it too. Like, I used to be big in selling knockout power. And I don't even like calling it knockout power. I like calling it knockout force.
That's
Because you're not hitting anything. You're not hitting
yeah.
the ball, and the ball travels. That's how you measure the power. Right? But it sells. People gravitate towards it. So I can get why they really like sell like the slam dunk, or baseball programs really sell the 100-mile-per-hour pitch to teenagers, because it's really sexy. But just for other athletes to be aware is that those really sexy carrots that sports performance companies use to attract your attention, and I'm guilty of it too. That shouldn't be the main thing you're looking for. Those sort of things, home runs, slam dunks, knockouts, line drives, those are very rare in the context of sports performance. Those are like really good bonuses. That's not the norm. In baseball, majority of the plays are like
Yeah.
center field hits, good grounders, good pitch execution. Hey, we don't need to throw 90. Let's throw 70 on a good slider and get this guy out. We don't need to slam dunk. Like, let's create a better passing offense so we can land more threes, or let's have the ability, if we need our point guard to drive it to the hole, he has the ability to work around defenders mid-flight like Michael Jordan did. You're going to see more of those in sports than like the big sexy movements.
Yeah, you gotta respect knees over toes guy from a marketing perspective. Just
Oh my
guys, he's
God, yeah.
brilliant. And I think
Brilliant. I copy him.
yeah,
Like, I've watched his content for a while. I'm like, okay, how is he doing this? Free value,
yeah,
sending it out to people. Like, his formula is great,
yeah.
and he deserves every dollar he's getting right now. He's fixed a lot of knees,
Yeah,
including mine.
yeah, mine
He's
too.
really helped my knee. Yeah.
Mine too. A lot of my clients that I've worked with. There's like what I think is so brilliant about his system is that you've got professional athletes using it for their performance, and then he also has videos with like his 70-year-old mom doing backward sled drags and stuff like that. And so he's kind of like you're saying, he's got the sexy, the dunks, that kind of aim for the stars goals, but then he walks it all the way back to an older lady. So it's kind of aim for the stars, you might at least hit the moon kind of philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really developed. He's really taken on the whole physical therapy world
Yeah.
in one.
Yep.
If you really think about it, because physical therapy is not designed to get athletes jumping better. It's designed to get you out the door.
Yeah.
And it's not really the fault of physical therapy. Like, physical therapy is so slow to progress because insurance companies.
Yeah. The other thing that he does that's brilliant is and it's kind of similar to your system. You don't have a lot of expensive equipment. You don't have to go get a squat rack. You don't have to go get a lat pull down rack. You just need some balance pipes and same kind of thing. He just has the slant boards, and he does have the Nordic curl bench and the tib bar here, but he started doing those with like $5 versions when he first started. But yeah, a lot of the people who blow up, they're selling something, they're
Indeed.
making money off of what they're selling, they're funneling that back into marketing. I think it's a lot harder to be as ubiquitous as the knees over toes guys become, without having an expensive product behind you to kind of drive that. Like, he's just selling information basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and here's another thing that I wish a lot of athletes would take more advantage of. Like, if you're injured and you need basic help, like Ben Patrick puts a lot of his information out there for free. I think his ATG was like his big free flagship product that I just sent out to millions of people. And physical therapy protocols are free on the internet. This shit is free.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Here's the interesting thing about marketing and what people buy into as far as training is that people are buying into accountability and the coach more than the information.
Yeah.
It's weird. We need the accountability. We need the reassurance. I've worked with guys that like knew my whole system. Like, they knew it, they studied it, they've been watching me for years, and they never fully integrated it because they were so unsure. And all I had to do is be like, yeah, you're doing it right. And they're like, okay, thanks. And they're just off. They're doing it all the time now. They're progressing. They're getting gains. So it's like, well, you've been doing this on a year on your own, not really getting great results. And just because I said, yes, double down on this, all of a sudden they have the confidence to really, really be consistent with it. And they have the accountability. Yeah. So it's funny. It's funny how...
I can attest to that personally. I started following you two years ago, give or take. I don't remember exactly, but I saw the exercises. You have a lot of the Marinovich footage on your page. I started incorporating a little bit of that to my workout, but it's only been the last month or two that we've been doing this podcast, and I've been more consistent with the training. And yeah, it was there for me the whole time, but now that I'm more consistent with it, feeling it more.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I tell people. If you're going to do something, if you're going to take on a new training system, whether it's anyone's training system, go all in on their protocol. Don't copy paste train. That is the worst idea you could ever do, is take bits and pieces from all these different training protocols and try to smash them together, because they could have all conflicting sequences. They could have conflicting protocols. They could have conflicting philosophies. That a lot of these systems are built under a philosophy to progress from one layer to the next layer to the next. And if you really stick with just one philosophy, whether anyone's philosophy, you're probably going to get the most out of it. You're going to get more exponential growth than trying to do good knees over toe stuff, trying to do like a little piece of nervous system training, a little bit of bodybuilding. You're going to get a lot of mixed results. So I would say if you find a philosophy that you like, go all the way in on it. Give it like a good 6 weeks, and then stop, look back, and try another one. And see if this one's giving you even better results. And until you start getting the results you want, don't stop. Yeah. That's why I tell the guys when they start doing nervous system training, like, we're just going to do this. Like, if this is like your goal, don't start mixing in other things, because then you could start mixing results. You can start creating variables that maybe you're not thinking about, I'm not thinking about. Maybe you're creating too much slow twitch, and that's why we're not getting faster, because you're doing too many X, Y, and Z from another program.
Yeah. And then kind of like what we're going through here, there's all these different training systems. They all have like real nuggets that anyone can use. They're going to be more catered for whatever they're catered to, but you gotta deep dive to actually understand what nuggets are going to be beneficial for your goals.
Yeah, and really feel it. So, like, I would say, and if you look at all these different training systems, they're all kind of, to be told, in my personal opinion, the more I kind of see training systems evolve over the years, the closer they're trying to get to what MAR system looks like.
Yeah.
Like you see it with like the tsunami bars. You see it with people putting bands around the trap bars so it shoots them down fast, like the Super Cat. You're seeing people trying to do things with slant boards, or they're trying to balance on like poles, like the Foot Collective does like the pole thing, with the barefoot or the rope. they're getting closer to what Marv does, but in my personal opinion, Marv kind of figured this out 20 years ago. And everyone's now trying to learn how to play the piano, and he friggin' mastered the piano a while back.
I was trying to remember the guy's name, Charles Poliquin. Do you know Charles Poliquin?
I
That
know the name.
was that's the Marv Marinovich, or Marv Marinovich is to nervous system training what Charles Poliquin is to knees over toes training. That was the guy who created that deep squat in the 70s. That
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And
Ben
also
Patrick
who's
is
that bodybuilder too? That was big on the knees over toes squatting. Chris Planch or whatever, or
I know what you're talking about. I
he was
don't
like he's like
remember his name.
he would like scream in the weight room like fucking kill me. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah.
was big into that. Big into that sort of movement, but he just took it to like a crazy hypertrophy level.
Yeah, so hopefully, this nervous system training kind of goes through the renaissance that the knees over toes training does. Yeah, since it's this cyclical stuff, like the thing that's gonna blow up, it often comes out before the time is there, like the piano.
Yeah, it's just the way it goes. So that's why just kind of sit back, because eventually people will like the future of training is neural.
Yeah,
It is, and this transition is going to be a very painful one. Because now people have access to AI to decipher information more quickly. Where you can test your theories with scientific logic. Even if you can't come up with a study, you can use scientific principles, and you can use the logic of those principles to predict an outcome.
Yeah.
Like that's really powerful, because a lot of times we have to think of it, and you have to test it, and you got to be like, okay, does this feel right? But you can just use an AI to just gather all the scientific principles ever and just start following the logic, and then here's a great example. When some coaches get really upset with me on the comments, right? So I did a post. Is this possible? Is it possible for us to pull up one of my posts on Instagram? The hip extension, like this, I reconverted a old Soviet training movement into a neurological reactive tissue movement.
was it a recent post?
It's maybe like 8 posts back or something like that. I'm hanging like this, my foot's on a ball, and I'm doing a big hip extension.
All right.
Keep going. Hit remapping the body. I think it might be that one. No, that's not it. I'm sorry. So if we go back, keep going down. Hit the Todd Marinovich one, number 13. That's Mars' son. You see it evolving the system? No, this isn't it. I'm sorry. Let's keep searching. It's one of these. It's coming through. So keep going down. Keep going down. Oh, react. No. Keep going down. Well, there's one with Yuri Forshahansky. I know for sure. Okay, so there's Cold War Conspiracy, Old School. Keep going.
Look,
It's Neurophysical Dominance. Keep going. Keep going. Go into Soviet innovation. Here it is. So this is an old school Soviet move, right? Which is a good move. It's a really underrated move. You can see there's Dr. Yuri Forshahansky, the guy who invented plyometrics, and basically all 60% of all sports science principles back in the 60s. He figured this out. And what I wanted to do is I wanted this to improve neurological drive, develop better reactivity out of the tissue, with still having good force output. And so we took one principle where pelvic pelvic hip extension has been proven to improve force output on jumping and sprinting, anything going forward. Right? This is a proven scientific principle. And it's also been proven that proprioceptive stability movements, like balancing one leg on a stability ball, that has been proven to develop better reactivity and better neurological intelligence out of the fascia, tendons, and muscles. These two things have been proven, and that's why we have a lot of instability exercises, like when you're going through physical therapy, say for like a hamstring injury, they're going to have you do a lot of holds on a proprioceptive surface because it neurologically recommunicates with the muscles. The tissue becomes more reactive, more elastic. So it's a way you can develop strength without compression. So with this, when you're using a hard surface, you're creating more compression than reactivity. So what I want to do is think of like a bouncy ball, right? You have a cue ball, like from a pool table, you bounce it. It will bounce the first time pretty hard, but it quickly loses energy. If you take the same size ball, but it's made out of an elastic rubber, it's going to bounce high the first time, high the second time, not as high the third time, not as like it'll have more recoil. It'll be able to redirect kinetic energy more efficiently in the same number of bounces. That's because what the material is made out of. The material is more elastic. It can absorb and recall kinetic energy a lot more efficiently than a hard compressed surface or mass. So you can do the same thing with your muscles. You can, because when you do it on a hard surface, you're making the muscles a little harder, a little bit more compressed, less reactive, less elastic. Your ability to absorb and recall kinetic energy will slightly get diminished over time. Now, your first initial output, like the power move that we love to measure, may be stronger, but the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth sequence of movements or rebounds will start to slightly diminish. And I'm talking fractions of an inch, fractions of a second, but in sports, that's everything. So if I'm taking these two principles that are both scientifically proven, reactive elastic strength development with proprioceptive surfaces, combined with a nice hip extension movement, now I'm combining them together. So if you just follow the logic that I'm creating a stronger, more elastic muscle sequence that gets both qualities. So now the ability to recoil the kinetic energy and the neurological drive and the power and the force generation all can improve simultaneously instead of one slightly reducing the other. Instead of really overemphasizing on the strength, compression, and power, which slightly reduces reactivity and elasticity and force generation over a long period sequence. Like the amount of strides it takes to run 100 meters compared to getting out of the starting blocks. And so many coaches got so upset with me because I did this. They said, like, this is a stability exercise. Like, why don't you learn physics? It's like, this is not how physics works. I'm like, yeah, yes, it is. Like, yes, it is. Like, what do you want? Do you want a cue ball or do you want a bouncy ball? Like, there's just more to it than just surface layer physics. So here's a way where I could take two scientific principles. Now, has this movement been tested by a university? No, it hasn't. Has this been like dissected by Elon Musk at SpaceX? Like, no, there's no evidence to back up what I'm doing. Not on this initial movement. There's no measurement I can pull from this to prove that this works. But there are two scientific principles that have been measured, have been proven. I'm combining them. So logically, what's going to happen? Just use your common sense. You're going to get qualities of both. So this is how you can take the principles and really start inventing new ways of doing things. Even if there's nothing to back it up, the principles are sound, so obviously it's going to work.
Yeah. My philosophy pertaining to what you're talking about is like with a sport like bodybuilding or powerlifting, you're more focused on the maximums. You know, like what for bodybuilding, it's like you're going for high reps, high volume, all that. With power, you're going for the most you can lift at once. But when it comes to function, what like in a fighting context, what really matters is the minimum. Like you're gonna get caught by the weaknesses in your system. You don't really get to use your full capabilities. You're more like held to the level of the weakest point in the structure. Where this is not going to help bodybuilding. You're not going to get big. It's not going to help powerlifting. You're not going to get strong because you don't have a solid surface to really build that peak strength. But you are going to lower or you're going to raise the lowest points in the system, the weakest points.
Yeah, the ones that actually are going to occur more often in your sport.
Yeah.
And remember, like this should be done towards a goal. Like my goal with this is I have a weaker hamstring on my left side. And I'm not getting to plyo yet. My leg is not ready for plyo. So I can't start. So I have to develop a new strength, a new reactive strength foundation. I'm trying to improve neurological drive and trying to develop better reactive tissue out of my hamstring. And so many coaches were upset with me when I posted this because they said I just ruined the exercise. Like if you read some of the comments, like feel free to read around. Yeah. You know, you'll see how upset. Like a lot of people like it, but the strength coaches got so butthurt. You know, and they're all saying like, you know, you just ruined this exercise. This isn't done properly. Like you're supposed to be doing more plyometrics. None of them asked me where I'm at with my program. No one asked me what my goal was. No one's actually trying to critically think. Everyone's just copying.
Yeah.
We're in a monkey see, monkey do mindset in sports performance right now. Because like whenever you tell me like, hey, can this work? Does this work? What am I always saying?
For what goal?
For what goal? I got to know the goal to figure out if it can work. And so no one of these coaches asked me what my goal was. They didn't ask me like where I'm at in my phases. None of them. They just immediately assumed, nope, stability. It looks physical therapy wrong. You've just fucked this whole thing up.
Yeah.
So you know, now you take that kind of thinking, multiply it by a whole industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why no one's inventing new shit.
Yeah. And I feel like for most people, the default is kind of that bodybuilding or somewhere between bodybuilding and powerlifting.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's what they assume your goal is if you don't specify it.
Yeah. So. But yeah, it's I did another video too. Now that I do remember, which kind of because I had to make another video to kind of explain. So if you scroll up, there's like a video and it has like some balls bouncing in the thumbnail. If you keep going up, It's up a few ways because I felt like I had right there high school physics because I kind of told them like, hey, we learned this in high school physics with dropping two different balls like a soccer ball and a baseball, seeing how they bounce. Like we learned this. You know, and I really break it down, you know, like misunderstanding how force works in the body. You take a cue ball, yeah, it bounces, but it loses kinetic energy quickly. You take something that's more elastic, and it maintains its kinetic energy every time it bounces more and more. And I agree so much. See how like it absorbs and recoils the kinetic energy. That's what your body does.
Yeah.
Our bodies are elastic. Like we're 60% water or something like that.
I don't know percentage, but yeah, largely.
Yes. So I'm trying to make myself into a bouncy ball. I'm not trying to make myself into a baseball.
I was almost going to bring up Bruce Lee's quote at the beginning of this conversation with "be water." I forget the specific context
be like water. Bruce Lee. It's kind of funny you brought that up. We could do a segment on that on our next episode where Bruce Lee prototyped the blueprint for nervous system training, but he didn't have the scientific language. They didn't have that language back in the 70s, so he had to use philosophical language to explain it.
That's cool.
Yeah, he even did things like when he did like with his hands like this, you know how like he like so they, like this is like when you do this is a big David Weck thing. It's called coiling. I think he does it like this or something. I was
about to ask about. Next week we can go through that since.
Yeah, we can break down coiling. I'm going to do a couple videos on it explaining what coiling is. But basically, what you're doing is you're trying to get like a fascial pattern neurologically triggered. The problem with coiling is that it creates stiffness. Like you can't like do this sort of thing like while you're playing sports. You can't grip your baseball bat that way. You can't like run like that. Like it's biomechanically, it's not sound for sports specific movements or sports skills. So there is something to there. And we talked about that one guy who does the interesting workouts where he has like their feet always like this.
Yeah, the the GOATA training we showed earlier in this conversation had
That's the
elements
same
of
guy?
that too. No, different guy.
Oh,
You're talking about the Joel, the guy who works with the NFL players that we
yeah,
talked about
yeah,
last week. Yeah, he
yeah.
does. We were talking about that coiling last week, and then I was also noticing it today with the Mark Bell video when he was doing the GOATA training. They kind of like that one move on the wall where they're lifting one leg and kind of coiling.
Yeah. So I'll give you just a quick hot take on coiling. And we'll probably wrap it up there. So like the thing about coiling is that coiling does work. You can create like a better neurological signal for neurological strength and drive. The problem is you can't take it with you. Your body naturally is going to coil. Now there is a school of thought where people are thinking more coil, more oscillation, more where you almost see people trying to sprint pigeon-toed now. Have you ever seen some of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that may not agree with your biomechanics, your genetic biomechanics. It might not agree with that, and I have a hypothesis that it could create injury over time because you haven't properly strengthened the weak muscle groups or improved the neurological patterns. So now you can put too much stress on these areas that aren't ready for it.
There's I'm a big Orioles fan, and growing up, Buck Showalter was the primary manager for most of my childhood years of the Orioles. But I remember he did an interview where he was talking about scouting baseball talent, and he was saying this was the first thing I ever heard about foot angle in my entire life. This was when I was a kid. He said the guys who run pigeon-toed are gonna hit more home runs, but at some point they might get a devastating injury in their career.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
it's
science.
interesting.
It was all just Buck Showalter was an old school manager. It was all just anecdotal, experience based.
But he's a scout.
Yeah.
Listen to scouts.
Yep.
Listen to scouts. You know why? Because they have to see more than they have to train. Guess what Mark Marinovich was for the NFL?
Yeah, he was a scout.
He's a scout. Yeah, man. That's all. I always wanted that job too. If I can get a scouting job somewhere, that'd be fun. You get so much information and understanding because you have to see so much more, and you're not seeing the weight room. You're seeing the field.
Yeah.
That's one thing strength coaches, in my opinion, the ones that I've helped over the years, my peers, not spend enough time on the field. They're in the weight room too much. You know, and when you work with someone, like, have you ever trained a client? Like, have you worked with an athlete yet in your personal business?
Yeah, I've been a trainer for a couple years, so I mean.
Okay. Have you ever felt that where whenever they come in to see you, you're like, oh, wait, how'd the game go? What is it looking like? You don't know, you're not seeing it. So everything you're trying to visualize, you know, you're trying to create theory. I had a mentor that told me, go to games, like watch your athletes, like dedicate like 2 hours a week, just eat the cost, watch them. You're going to get so much farther in your performance by actually seeing them on the field instead of just seeing them in the weight room, because it creates too much of a disconnect to your theories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Quinn. We can wrap up for today. This is
Right.
and then we can kind of pick up here next week. We'll talk about coiling, Weck method. Anyone watching, send us videos of yourself working out. Send us videos of athletes working out or trainers. We'll add it to our queue. And yeah, we've got a lot to go through next week and beyond.
All right.